بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, it is my honor and privilege to invite all of you to our roundtable discussion. Our roundtable discussion, the first one we had was last weekend, Alhamdulillah, with Maulana Tamim, Ahmadi, and Sheikh Shadi. And mashallah, that we received a lot of positive feedback from the roundtable discussion on pertinent topics relating to the COVID-19 situation. And there was a lot of requests and feedback, and mashallah, people reaching out that we should do another one. So alhamdulillah, we have a great lineup today regarding another very relevant topic that has been titled Family Matters, Maintaining Family Ties During the Lockdown. And this is a reality that we have never spent so many hours per day with our families. Due to the COVID-19 lockdown, spouses are now working from home, most of the homes, in many of the households. And all of our children are now learning online. They're stuck at home. And trips outside the houses are limited. So undoubtedly, this is a recipe for increased tension within the home, which could unfortunately lead to dire consequences if not managed properly. So inshallah, today we have a respected panel. We will be discussing the rights of parents, the rights of children, rights of spouses, in-laws, etc. And we can inshallah learn to live in harmony with our family members and keep our relationships intact. So inshallah, we are going to begin with our respected guest, Dr. Sheikh Abdurrahman ibn Yusuf Manghera. He is a British Muslim scholar, educated in both Islamic and Western traditions. He memorized the Quran by heart and graduated from the Darul Uloom Seminary in Bury, UK, and later earned a specialized license to issue fatwa at Masjid al-Ulum, Saharanpur, India. He earned his BA from the University of Johannesburg and completed his MA and PhD in Islamic Studies from the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. He holds an honorary fellowship at the Royal Ahlul Bayt Institute for Islamic Thought, Amman, Jordan. Sheikh Abdurrahman has the unique experience of serving as an imam in Muslim communities on both sides of the Atlantic, 8 years in Southern California and over 5 in the great city of London. And his continued work as an international speaker and lecturer enables him to address and offer pertinent advice on current challenges that face Muslims in the West. He is the founder of White Thread Institute, a postgraduate institute for Islamic scholars. He is an avid traveler and continues to teach hadith and work on scholarly publications through White Thread Press. Their website is whitethreadpress.com. Many of his lectures are available on zamzamacademy.com and his courses through Rayyan Institute, rayyaninstitute.com. And alhamdulillah, he is also the author of a very beautiful book that recently came out, The Handbook of a Healthy Muslim Marriage, Unlocking the Secrets to Ultimate Bliss. So alhamdulillah, he's very qualified to speak on this topic since he has done so much research and he has published a book on this topic. So I want to jump right in with Mufti Abdurrahman ibn Yusuf Manghera and ask him in his experience right now dealing with the community over in the UK, which is under similar lockdown situations as we have here in the US, what are some of the issues that he has seen recently that he's facing as an imam and a leader of the community and a scholar at the same time?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just wanted to do a sound test. Can everybody hear?
Alhamdulillah. Yes,
yep.
You're good to go.
So it's nice to be with you. I don't know where you guys are, whether you're in Chicago or surrounding areas, but here it's just past 8 o'clock in the evening and it's going to be iftar in about half an hour. So I'm going to have to rush. So I want you to, inshallah, if you can, concentrate if you can, because I'm going to try to say several different things in a short amount of time. What we find is we, we find that because of the lockdown, there's been a lot of there's basically been a lot of first time people are finding that they have to stay together and live together, and they're discovering a lot of things about themselves and about their spouses that they maybe did not know before, sometimes even with their children. So in one of the lectures that I gave at the beginning of this, I said that, you know, this may be now the time to do with your children and your family, your spouse, things that you've always dreamt of doing and, you know, thought you could do and you never had the time to do, and Allah has given you the time to do. You see, a lot of people, when they call in with issues that they're having with their spouse, they, and you know, maybe some of you can relate to this, but basically what they do is they provide you a scenario that, okay, this is what's going on with my spouse. These are the measures that I've taken. None of this has worked. I've tried this, that hasn't worked. I've tried this, that hasn't worked either. And then they put it in front of you as though there's some magic that we have to solve the situation. I remember there was this one email that I received, very detailed, and then I spoke to the individual as well. And basically I told her that you're not giving me any option. You said you've done dua, you've contacted his parents, you've contacted the ulama, he doesn't listen to anybody, you've done this, you've done that, whatever. Now what do you want from me? Do you want magic from me? Right? So a lot of the time what people are doing is they're looking for magic. Our job as scholars is to basically assist people, and what we generally tend to do is we try to speak through. And this is something that I mentioned, that even if you don't call somebody up to help you, I mean, try to look through all of the different possibilities of why your situation is the way it is, right? And one of the lectures that I've done recently, which may be on zamzamacademy.com, you can listen to it there in detail because we've only got a short time now, is premarital, the concept of premarital counseling. Premarital counseling, right? I remember when somebody broached that to me in the beginning, I said, we're already having trouble with in marital counseling. You know, we don't have enough counselors that are there that understand the Islamic paradigm, you know, along with normal counseling norms. You know, they don't understand the Islamic paradigm. They don't understand the religious paradigm that a lot of us come from, right? So essentially, you know, people who are sensitive to that, that's very difficult to find them. And now you're talking about premarital counseling. Now, I mean, I've indicated towards premarital counseling in the book, but the content I'm going to share with you right now is not in the book, right? The book's name is Handbook of a Healthy Muslim Marriage. Maybe they can put it up on the screen, find a shot of it and put it on the screen or the website or something later. But basically the idea is that what I'm going to share with you is not in the book. And the idea here is that before you get married, and I know some of you are thinking, well, we're already married, but this is inshallah relevant to you. We need to be honest with ourselves. And I think in this current lockdown situation, I think we will be discovering things. If we open up our mind, we'll be discovering a lot of things about ourselves. We're definitely going to discover a lot of things that are going to aggravate us, maybe about our spouses. For some people, alhamdulillah, you know, a lot of people don't have this problem. I mean, I, alhamdulillah, don't have this problem. I've thoroughly enjoyed the lockdown. I'm actually scared when it's going to be lifted and it's going to go back to normal. I'm just scared of the normal actually now, right? I've just thoroughly enjoyed it. Ramadan was wonderful. And, you know, I pray that Allah make it beneficial for everybody, that they get something out of this, right? And that this was not just a wasted endeavor. It will not be a wasted endeavor. Clearly, Allah, to have upset the whole, you know, balance, well, I mean, the new balance of the world, you know, to bring it back into norms of the normal balance. I think there was definitely a wisdom there, which I think only years and years and years will reveal to us what the benefits were of these times. And I hope we can all, and our leaders and everybody, can learn from it. But anyway, the point is that we're discovering things about our spouse because we're focused on our spouse, maybe, right? If we start focusing on ourselves, then we'll also learn about ourselves. Generally, from a psychological perspective, human beings love themselves more than anybody else. That's why when we have issues within our own self, we find them very difficult to figure out, right? And even when somebody points them out, while we know deep down that what they're saying is either fully correct or partially correct as well, because sometimes, you know, people criticize us, they do exaggerate, right? So at least it's partially correct, but we're not willing to face up to it and do something about it. So now let me just throw a few things out there as ways to think about this. All right, so whether you're married or you're not married yet, all right, if let's just start with a simple issue of anger. That's generally a big ingredient, right? Generally the issues that cause problems in marriage is either going to be anger issues, monetary issues, it's going to be in-law issues, it's going to be children issues, or it's going to be sexual intimacy issues. All right, these are, you can say, the main five. There are others as well, right? But these are the main five. And of course there's issues of, you know, then there's issues of narcissism, there's issues of arrogance, there's issues of pride, there's issues of always being right, always not being not apologizing. These are all there as well. But the big issues that cause issues are these five. So let's just think about anger. All right, are you an angry person? Do you get angry quickly? Now, how are you going to know that? I mean, if we are people who get angry quickly, it's actually very difficult to figure out, if we don't compare ourselves with something or with someone else, actually, that we get more angry than others. That's why all I'm going to tell you to do is to think about your own siblings. Compare yourself to your siblings or a colleague that you've worked with for a very long time. You'll notice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us all differently, right? And me compared to my brothers, some of us are going to be such that we're going to get more angry than others, right? On small issues, other one will be relaxed and I'll get angry maybe, right? Allah creates us all differently with both strengths and weaknesses that we have to work on. So for example, if one brother or sister compares themselves with another one of their siblings, they may find that some of the siblings will be some of them will be sharper than others, more intelligent than others. Others will be a bit slower. Some will be more generous than others. Others will find it more difficult to spend, while others find it easy. Some will get angrier more than others, while others don't. There'll be some which have more compassion and empathy than others, and others don't. So that's just the nature in which Allah creates us, right? So if every one of us is honest with themselves, right, they will know that, okay, I've got a problem with a bit of anger. I don't have as much empathy as my brother does, for example. I'm not as generous as my brother. I may be sharper than my brother, right? So I've got some strengths, I've got some weaknesses. As long as I can recognize that, I can start work on it. Because if you don't work on these things, like for example, the anger issue, if you're a guy who gets angry quickly, frequently, before you calm down from the first event, you get angry again, and it just, you know, compound anger, you're going to have a problem in your marriage. You're probably already having a problem in your marriage if that's your issue, especially when, you know, you get angry at small noises, you get angry when somebody's messing around. Like for example, I had a case of somebody who is a taxi driver, Uber taxi driver, whatever. He works at night because you make more money at night, apparently. So he was working at night. He comes home in the morning to sleep. And if his children make noise in the daytime, he gets angry on his wife to keep them quiet. Now, can you imagine the situation there where he's working abnormal hours, night is for sleeping, he chooses to work at night for whatever reason, maybe he's got a valid reason, right? Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. And the time that his children are supposed to be playing in the house, he wants them to be silent because he's sleeping. Now, what's the way out of that situation? Now, if he wants it his way, no, I'm going to work at night, I'm going to sleep in the day, you guys have to be quiet, that's going to be a very, 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 very miserable home. All right. So until a person recognizes that what I'm doing is the one that's causing this, it's unnatural, it's unreasonable to ask for the children to be quiet and then get angry on my wife if she can't. They're children at the end of the day, they need to make some noise, right? Until you get a big mansion or something and they can have one wing of the house and you can have another wing of the house and you can sleep all you want, or make soundproofing room or something like that. You know, there are obviously solutions if you really want. Okay, that's one thing. Just quickly to stream through the other ones. Number two, are you an emotional person that likes to cry very easily or can cry very easily? So, you know, because everybody's at home now and slowly, you know, somebody may have said something, you know, because there's going to be banter and things like that. and you're just going to get emotional. You stop speaking to people very quickly. Are you like that? You're going to have a tough time in your marriage, right? You're already having a tough time in your marriage if that's what you're doing, right? That's not natural. I mean, I remember one day my son came home from school. He was probably about 7 or 8 at the time, probably about 6, probably about 7 or 8. And he was mentioning his friend. He says, I've stopped speaking to him. So immediately I said, like, where'd you learn to stop speaking to somebody from? You know, how does a small kid learn how to stop talking to somebody? Like, you know, that be a response to a problem, some aggravation. And I said, that's just very lazy. You don't do that. That's a very lazy attitude. You do not stop speaking to people just on small. Deal with the matter, right? Deal with the matter, get over it. But clearly where he's probably learning it from is probably another friend who said that to him. So we need to teach our children these things from a young age so that when they grow old, they don't foster these kind of bad attitudes, because those people who do get emotional very quickly and stop speaking to people very quickly, they will know that while they think it's an escape, it's actually they're harming themselves, because they're very alone when that happens to them. And you have to remember that if you're an emotional person, you like to cry very easily, then let me tell you what to do, you know, because I've looked into this quite deeply, because there are people, and basically you have a quality, mashallah, right, which you're using to your detriment at this point. What you need to do is you need to use it to your advantage. And that's why there are people there. 27th night is around the corner in a few days, and there will be people who cannot cry even though they will try to cry. But mashallah, you are crying for free. Your tears just come down for free, you know, 1 to the dozen. What I would suggest you do, and this is what the ulama mentioned, that when you do feel like crying, when you feel teary, when you feel emotional like that, open the Quran up and read it with a translation and reflect. You will find so many things to cry about. And that means your emotion will be channeled in the right direction. The second thing that you do is, if you don't want to be reading Quran, then you just put your hands up to Allah and cry to Allah. Believe me, the tear that is shed for the right reason for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is extremely valuable. So don't waste the very valuable tears that Allah has given you. And basically, you know, okay, that's number 2. Number 3, I'm going to just zoom through these because we don't have time, right? Sorry, go ahead.
No, Jazakallahu Khairun, mashallah, beautiful pearls of wisdom you're dropping.
Okay, so well, they'll only be useful, inshallah, if people put them to use, and it will be helpful to people, right? They may sound good on paper, but believe me, they are very realistic. And inshallah, if you put these things and be honest with yourself. Okay, the third thing you need to you know, assess yourself about is that, get ready for this, am I a narcissistic, domineering, arrogant, swaggering, braggart type of individual who always thinks he's right and everything must run the way I want it? Allahu Akbar. If you're a person like that, you know that when it comes right, you enjoy it. But a lot of the time, there will be people who will be suffering around you. They won't be able to even say something to you because you are so dominant. Whether that's the wife, whether that's the husband, doesn't make a difference. Now, remember, some people, you know, have more challenges of one than others. Some genders have more challenging aspects than others. If that's your problem, this is actually even worse than the first 2. Because you know, the first 2, if you're an angry person, you get angry quickly, or you get emotional quickly, you will know that. You can't hide that from yourself. All right. You know that you're an angry person and you need to get help. So for anger, you need to read the Quran and Sunnah, and there's lots of suggestions in there provided to us, virtues of controlling anger. And if it gets worse than that, you need to get an anger management course online. Be honest with yourself. Imagine it's a mental health problem and want to sort it out. It will improve the next 20 years of your marriage if the first 20 years of your marriage have been messed up. Believe me, you owe it to yourself, to your family, and to your progeny. Because remember, what you're doing right now with your spouse and your immediate children is not just about you guys. It's going to be their children and their children and their children. You are essentially setting up your entire progeny until the day of judgment, right? With behavior, right? Unless somebody comes and corrects it. That's why it's worth it. It's well worth it. It is necessary for us to work on ourselves, to sort out our anger management problems, our emotional problems, and so on, to channel them in the right way and all the rest of it, so that we can provide a wonderful space in our homes. Otherwise, what's going to happen is that we're going to provide an unstable environment, and that's why a lot of the rage that is out there, people doing crazy things out there, if you look at their lives, they came from unstable homes, a lot of them. There are studies to show that. All right, that a lot of instability in the homes, deprivation of the love and affection, deprivation of reasonable, attitude, empathy, what do you call it, a correct amount of strictness, not overly strict, not under strict, just indulging the children in a way that you don't basically care for them, to let them grow like weeds, get what they want. All of these are attitudes that we need to think about, but it starts off with the husband and wife. Okay, so I'm just going to run through the others. Are you a person who is very domineering? Problem with this one is that you're probably not even going to recognize it, because this is a very hidden one. It's such an inherent one. It's so difficult to recognize. But be again honest with yourself. Ask a close friend to critique you, and say, I sign a disclaimer form that I'm not going to get you back for it. I'm not going to criticize you as well. Just critique me honestly and tell me, what, or listen to your enemies, right? And maybe discount the exaggeration, but listen to your enemies. Are you a person who's too much into their own family so that you can't invest into your new family? You always like talking to your mum all the time, right? In a way that, you basically do a running soap opera with your mother about your marriage, and then she remote controls you, right? Are you a person who's really into his friends? So every night you have to leave and you have to be with your friends. Are you really into your phone? I mean, who's not, right? Are you so much into your phone or your soccer or football or whatever people are into, or games, or subhanAllah, I mean, worse things like pornography or whatever, right? That you are not going to focus, because every extra moment you've got, that's where you are, because that's what you're into. Family requires investment. Family requires investment. And we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to recognize what our problems are. And I've mentioned a number of them.
Yeah.
And that's how we'll understand. All right.
Jazakallahu khair. Jazakallahu khair, Muhtisa. Before you go for your iftar, we cannot delay your iftar and make your fast makruh. That's not what we want, for sure. The second topic that we had was I wanted to get some input from you, some advices from you regarding maintaining in-law relationships.
Okay, so the in-law relationship is a much more complicated one, and there are a lot of factors involved. I'm going to mention some general factors. I've got a whole discussion about that in the book, all right? And so, those who want to read it, I'll let them read that in detail, but just a few factors. You see, the most difficult case when it comes to in-laws, right, is that, let's put a few stats up there. Number one, it's generally the mother-in-law and sometimes the father-in-law that are basically the culprits in this, right? Most of the time, and there's a reasoning behind that. Sometimes it's actually from the daughter-in-law, and I'm assuming that most of the time it's the daughter-in-law, mother-in-law problem, right? Son-in-law, mother-in-law problem, hardly the case unless you're from a community like the Malaysians or the Tamils in Sri Lanka, where where the husband actually moves in with the wife's family, right? And I found that very strange when I first heard it, because I was actually invited to a friend's house, and then after that, when they actually mentioned the wisdoms behind it, I thought actually a very good setup, because essentially the whole daughter-in-law, mother-in-law situation doesn't arise because she's with her own mother. It gives the husband time to basically save up some money, right? And then after they eventually move out. So one of the biggest issues, the daughter and mother-in-law, that syndrome does not come about. But anyway, whatever the case is, let's just talk about the norm. So generally, as many of our scholars said as well, it's generally the mother-in-laws who are doing the oppression, sometimes without even realizing. The psychology behind it, if you're a mother-in-law, the psychology behind it is that you're very possessive of your domain, right? You've been running your little kingdom for, the last at least 20 years, I'm assuming, if you've got a child old enough to be married, 20, 30 years. And you got no patience. You're not willing to help somebody that comes in fresh and to, mold them in a soft way, right? To maybe cook the way you want them to cook, deal with it the way you want to deal with it. The other issue here is the narcissism issue. They've done studies on this, that a mother feels very possessive over her son. It's her son, right, who she is basically invested hugely in. And mashallah, 20, 30 years of investment into a child is a huge investment. And she feels very possessive. Now this daughter comes along, and this is where the son sometimes messes up and he causes the bigger problem. And sometimes he's not the problem causer, but he's part of the problem. And sometimes he's trying not to be part of the problem, but sometimes he is the problem. All right. So what do I mean? So the son then, he goes full whack into his wife and he kind of neglects his mother. The mother feels that. I mean, she's going to feel it even if you don't neglect her. So if you do neglect her, she's definitely going to feel it. So then what happens is the mother starts a war, all right? Because the daughter-in-law is now a threat, right? It's just a threat. That's why the responsibility of the son, the husband, is the most important. He has to literally play two sides. He has to tell his wife good things about his mother, and he has to tell his mother good things about his wife. He has to encourage them to get gifts for one another, to do better. And that is very difficult, especially if you are under your mother's thumb and you can't say anything. And I want to clarify a religious aspect here. A lot of times, one of the reasons for the imbalance in this case is that people think that they must listen to their parents regardless of what they say. And while obedience and kindness to parents is mentioned in the Quran, it is not without limits. It's not unqualified. All right. Number one, as Allah makes it very clear, that worship of your Lord, and Allah says that if they tell you to do shirk with Allah, you do not listen to them. That in itself shows that the obedience to parents is not absolute, right? Kindness to them is absolute, and goodwill towards them is absolute, but obedience is not. And that's why even our jurist, Shami, etc., have made it very clear that if a parent is oppressive, and that's something which you're going to have to be very careful of your determination of that. That's why I always go to a scholar to relate to them as honestly as possible what you're faring with your parents, to try to help them give you an understanding of whether they are unreasonable or not, right? So if they are being unreasonable and they're telling you to oppress your wife or whatever the case is, you don't have to listen to that. But it's a very, very difficult, what do you call it? What's the word? Tightrope. It's literally like a tightrope on top of Niagara Falls or something, right?
Any advices for the daughter-in-law, like how should she behave?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. So because a lot of the time it's coming, the son, if he doesn't manage it properly, then the whole burden comes onto the daughter-in-law, right? And we generally focus on the daughter-in-law. We don't focus on the son-in-law, right? And it's like he's the victim. And that's why it's important that we focus on the son-in-law, that he has to play that balancing game, right? Now, he has to do his best. Of course, the daughter-in-law now, she's going to have to, number one, she has to understand that if she's going to go in there with an attitude that I don't need to do anything, which may be religiously the case, but when you're part of a culture, it doesn't matter what unless your religion mandates something, right? Then culture takes over. At the end of the day, that's why the scholars have said that while in Quran and Sunnah, you will only find a few responsibilities mentioned between husband and wife as rights to one another, cooking not being one of them. But the fuqaha have written that if you are from a culture in which the women are, they're not served by servants, but they actually cook and they clean and things like that, then you would also be, between you and Allah, be also obligated to do the same, because that's the assumption under which you're getting married. All right. So that's why culture is actually relevant in that case. Yes, if you're from a culture where you do not cook and mashallah, you're very wealthy and you got servants in the house, then just make sure you don't get married to somebody who doesn't have servants and where you're going to have to cook, because otherwise, they're probably going to, and men shouldn't get married to people like that, because otherwise you're not going to get the expectations. That's why you have to be careful when you find people. For the daughter-in-law though, they have to realize that number one, from an obligation between them and Allah, there are certain things that will be obligatory upon them. So keep that in mind. Number two, so the idea is that they can't take you to court for it, but at the end of the day you will be answerable. Number two, you have to take this with empathy. You have to do a lot of sabr and patience. At the end of the day, they are elders. They're supposed to be like your second mother or father. So that's why it's important that you bear with a lot of patience. Of course, I mean, the kind of extreme cases where they're just being unreasonable or whatever, then you do have the right to basically demand from the husband, whether directly or through a Sharia court, that you be live separately. But you see, in that, that's a gamble, because your husband may be forced by his parents to divorce you. He may divorce you himself. You may be left without a marriage, and then you'd have to get married again. So that's why it's always a good idea that if that's not a situation you want to get into, then that should be a condition in your marriage. But otherwise, you know, we do need people to live with parent in-laws. We do need that, because at the end of the day, we have a ailing, you know, first generation. Somebody does have to look after them, right? Of course, they have to relent and they have to be nicer and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, we also need to show our own akhlaq and character and sabr and patience, and use tactics. I mean, I've given several suggestions in the book, for example, buying gifts, saying good things even if they say bad things, trying to win them over that way, trying to do things different, try to basically accommodate their style. You may have learned to make, you know, biryani by your mother, right? She may make it in some Hyderabadi style. You've gotten married to somebody from Punjab, originally Punjabi background, they make it differently, right? And so you're going to have to learn to do these things separately. And why not learn how to make biryani in 2 different ways? And I know it's not as simple as that. I know I'm not trying to be reductionist here, right? I know it's not as simple as that, but I'm just giving ideas that you do have to be flexible. That's why one of the 7 advices that I give to women is that be flexible and roll with the change, right? Be flexible and roll with the change. Otherwise, if you're going to be stubborn, it's going to be very difficult. It's already a difficult, psychologically challenging situation, right? With natural narcissism involved in there from the mother-in-law, possessiveness. Over, you have to win. You have to show your mother-in-law that I'm an asset to you, and I'm not basically here to take your son away from you. And that's why you have to, in front of maybe, encourage the son to do khidmah of his mother. There are tactics you can use. Give you last example. When the fire worshippers got thrown out of Iran, right, when they had to go away from Persia, and basically there was a group of them that came to India. That's why, that's where the Magians are today, right? The Parsis, as we call them. So whoever the ruler or the king or the whoever it was at the time in India, he said, I've already got a full country. It's full to the brim. We don't have, you know, space here. So there was a cup of milk there. He asked for a cup of milk. So what this Magian guy did, he took some sugar and he put it into the milk, right? And basically what he showed him is that we're not here to rock the boat. We're not here to spill the milk. We're not here to overflow it. We're here to sweeten the situation for you. Now that's a tough call, right? That's tough. And, you know, a lot of the time our, you know, young women who get married, they're very immature, right? They may have a degree or whatever, but they absolutely have no idea. And this is like men as well. So they don't take this as offensive, but they're really immature about how to live their life, a married life, how to deal with a husband, how to deal with, you know, with mother-in-laws, how to deal with home, you know, because they've just been in university all the time. And sometimes it's their parents are to blame because they haven't taught them, right? A lot of our first generation is to blame here because they don't teach them. They're just worried about them getting huge degrees so that they can get a good job, right? Especially in America, that's a big issue. All right. So the thing is that this is something you have to live and learn by, and you can't learn this from movies or soap operas. You can't basically watch a soap opera or some serial thingy on what do you call that, Netflix or whatever, and then expect to do that in your home. Those things are made up. That's not real life. All right. And, you know, just think back at all the bad things that you saw in your own house. Don't repeat them. All right. And try to look for optimism, learn from others, read other people's, what do you call it, ideas and suggestions and experiences. And basically a lot of dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but basically be flexible about this. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all the homes.
Jazakumullahu Khairun, Mufti Sahab. I just want to let you know that we put your picture of your book on the screen, and the Darul Islam here, we sell it. If anyone wants to come over and pick up a copy, we do sell it here at Darul Islam. And alhamdulillah, for more videos of Mufti Abdurrahman Manghera, please visit Zamzam Academy on YouTube. We have put up the link on our YouTube chat for Zamzam Academy. And we also put up a link to purchase the book online. If you want to purchase the book, you can purchase the book, inshallah. One of the questions that came on the YouTube chat was, we have this beautiful handbook for a healthy Muslim marriage that you have written. Do you recommend any parenting book?
You know, unfortunately, I haven't read many, and I'm not writing one. I only wrote this marriage book after over 20 years of being married and over 20 years of consulting with people, right? It's a very practical book based on anecdotes. I'm waiting for my two eldest to get married, and then, you know, to marry them off basically, and then to be settled. Then I will, inshallah, myself feel comfortable about writing a book on parenting, because I think then I'll say I can succeed. Otherwise, it's a tough job. But there are a few good books out there, but I can't think of any right now. Maybe you guys, somebody else can give some suggestions. So sorry about that.
Inshallah. Dr. Habibullah Mukhtar Saab, he has a book about raising Muslim children. He translated from Arabic with some notes. It's translated in English as well. Okay, Jazakallah Khair. I believe it's your iftar time, correct?
We've got about 10 minutes, so alhamdulillah, it's good enough time for.
Alhamdulillah. And mashallah, Jazakumullah Khairan for, inshallah, for all of those beautiful advices.
Jazakallah khair for the opportunity. It's absolute honor. I can't see who's online, who's not, but God bless you all. God bless you all. And if you're having problems in your marriage, may Allah remove them. May Allah allow us to be very practical to sort this out. We owe it to our next generations, because you're starting a whole line that's going to last until the day of judgment, possibly, and you don't want to do wrong in that. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to do that. And the magical dua you should read, Surah Al-Furqan. Please do put this dua up. It's a magical dua. Surah Al-Furqan, verse 74. رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Right, our Lord, grant us from our spouses, and our children, our progeny, those that will be the coolness of our eyes. And ulama have said that this is such a magical dua that if you read this, then anything that is bad habits or bad traits in your spouse, Allah either will eliminate them over time, or He will make them so insignificant in your eyes that they won't bother you anymore. So if you're having problems or you're not having problems, read this dua. It will be of benefit to yourself, for your spouses, and for your children, inshallah, as well. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. And please do remember me at least in some short dua of yours. And may Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum.
Mufti Saab, before you leave, please, as you see the pictures of Dar es Salaam on the YouTube channel, please make dua for our seminary that's under construction so that we can complete it.
Oh, mashallah, mashallah. That's really nice. Mashallah, amazing.
It's still under construction right now. It's a 65,000 square feet expansion. And inshallah, we have been trying to invite you for so long, but inshallah, once it's done, we hope that the visa situation works and we get you through, inshallah. Maybe for Bukhari Khatam, inshallah. And
inshallah, I'd love to come. This is, mashallah, that's very impressive. First time I'm seeing it like this. That's amazing. MashaAllah. Allah bless. Allah remove all the difficulties from your path, and allow whatever funds you need as well to be brought, inshallah, very easily, inshallah. And protect you guys, and allow this to be full of guidance, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah Khairun. Now I'm going to introduce, thank you so much for joining us. Inshallah, we will meet in person next time. Okay. I would like to introduce our next guests who are joining us. Alhamdulillah. We are moving from the UK now to South Africa. Alhamdulillah, all the way in South Africa, we have Maulana Muhammad ibn Harun Abbas Umar with us. Alhamdulillah, he is a graduate of Madrasa Ta'limuddin, Ispingo Beach, South Africa in 1998. Alhamdulillah, he's a hadith specialist. And amongst others, he has studied from his father, Maulana Harun Abbas Umar, Hafizahullah, who is one of the greatest scholars of hadith, and is a Shaykh al-Hadith for many years in South Africa. And also from Shaykh Fadl Rahman Azmi, Hafizahullah, who spoke with us, and he joined us yesterday. We had an Urdu program with Maulana Fadl Rahman Azmi yesterday, Saturday. Alhamdulillah, he's a Shaykh al-Hadith at Madrasa Azadville in South Africa. And he also has studied from the Grand Muhaddith of our era. At a global level, internationally, one of the greatest hadith scholars alive, Sheikh Muhammad Awama, originally from Halab, Syria, but lived many years in Medina, and recently he relocated to Turkey. So he is one of his special students. And mashallah, here at Dar es Salaam as well, he taught Sahih Bukhari over Skype, a portion of Sahih Bukhari, the beginning portion last year. So alhamdulillah, we are very honored that he is with us. And we also have Brother Human, mashallah, who is joining us. He's very, mashallah, well known here locally. He's a licensed psychotherapist in the state of Illinois, and he holds a doctorate of clinical psychology. and a Master's of Clinical Psychology and Bachelor's of Science. He's a specialist in psychology track with a minor in Islamic Studies. He is currently a visiting scholar for Ibn Khaldun University and adjunct professor at American Islamic College, Hartford Seminary, instructor of psychology at Islamic Online University, and founding director of Khalil Center, which is the first Islamically oriented professional community mental wellness center and largest provider of Muslim mental health care in the United States. He's also a fellow at the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding at the Global Health Center, conducting research on topics related to Muslims and mental health. Dr. Human is an international public speaker and trainer, currently serving as a clinical supervisor of graduate students of clinical psychology at the Village of Hoffman Estates. He also delivers seminars on specialized topics around multiculturalism and psychology. Dr. Human has also authored several published academic papers in recognized peer-reviewed journals on integrating Islamic spirituality into modern psychological practice. Alhamdulillah, he also studied Sharia studies formally and informally. He's a student of Sheikh Muhammad Zakaria from Toronto, Canada. And he also studied with Sheikh Amin. He studied a little bit here at Dar es Salaam as well. And now he's continuing his studies at Dar al Qasim. So, Alhamdulillah, we have these two great speakers with us. I wanted to jump into the topic. Alhamdulillah, we spoke about marriage and in-law relationships with Mufti Abdul Rahman. He gave his perspective. But I would like to start with Mawlana Muhammad ibn Harun Abbas Umar. If he can tell us from the light of Quran and Sunnah, as a hadith specialist, if he can shed some light from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about maintaining the marriage, a healthy marriage. If you can shed some light on that, Jazakallahu Khair.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullahu Khairan, Mufti Minhaj Sahib. Mufti Abdul Rahman Sahib, alhamdulillah, has given us quite a bit of insight, especially based on his interaction and experience spanning over so many years. Relationships of every kind are important and are actually a great ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Rabbul Izzah has mentioned time and again in Quran the ni'mat of relationships. One verse very pertinent to today's discussion is Surah Furqan, وَهُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ مِنَ الْمَاءِ بَشَرًا فَجَعَلَهُ نَسَبًا وَصِهْرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here speaks about the ni'mat and the bounty of having family blood ties and marital ties. So nasaban wa sihran. Mufassirun have all explained that in this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is extolling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining his favor on mankind, that this is his favor towards us. And obviously when something is granted to us as a favor, it should be honored, it should be respected. So whether it be blood relationships that will be discussed inshallah further on in the program, or whether it be marital relationships with one's spouse or one's in-laws, these relationships ought to be valued. And a man, when something is valuable, then we got to go out of our way. And sometimes and maybe not just sometimes, but on many occasions, we're going to have to make exceptions to the rule. We're going to have to tolerate extra. We're going to have to be patient. We're going to have to bring our good qualities to the fore to show our value for these relationships. Mufti Abdul Rahman Sahib had mentioned also the aspect of akhlaq and good character. And this is an ingredient, again, that is needed in every relationship, whether it be marital, whether it be a blood relationship, whether it be any other social relationship. But akhlaq and character is the core engine to make such relationships last. And Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, good akhlaq and good character personified. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam's akhlaq was actually a mirrored reflection of whatever instructions Allah had given in Quran towards akhlaq, etc. Quite a while ago, Mufti Maulana Tariq Jamil Saab, Hafizahullah, had mentioned one incident I would like to share to contribute to the topic. It's to do with between spouses. And now during COVID-19, as we all are experiencing, we're spending more time together. He says there was a person who was his father's friend. And He was, mashallah, very handsome person, very well built, sturdy. And when time came for him to get married, um, he wanted to marry somebody who had better looks and who was more attractive outwardly. But his parents actually wanted that he should marry a particular woman by the name of Noor Bibi. But they say that Noor Bibi was such that she didn't have much outer features. She wasn't very attractive outwardly. And this person was in this predicament. Tariq Jamil Saab says, I wasn't alive at that time, but this was my father's friend, and I heard this incident from my father. He says that that friend at that time mentioned to my father, what do I do? On one hand, I can't break the hearts of my parents, and on the other hand, I'm going to live my life with this woman who I'm not attracted to. At the end, mashallah, Allah guided him, and alhamdulillah, he took the advice of his parents. And the advice of one's parents when it comes to choosing a spouse is very, very important, very effective. My respected father, Hafizahullah, always mentions that Allah has given insight, especially to the mother. Allah has given insight to your mother that when you are looking for a spouse and your mother sees that spouse and she knows your needs, and she can gauge from her, feminine interaction with that particular woman whether she will be able to fulfill your needs that you have or not. So it may not be obviously, something that one is bound to. Mufti Abdul Rahman Sahib had mentioned certain points that the fuqaha have made, but just in general, the advice, as I'm saying, of one's parents when choosing a spouse is absolutely, essential, and that of the mother is even more critical. So he say that initially when we were married, what used to happen, there was no munasabat, like we say. We just never could get along. So he says, like, when she would be in the house, I would go out of the house. She would be in one room and I would be in another room. We just couldn't get along. And it's so obviously, the wife would have detected this. Noor Bibi had detected this. So then she began to display her inner beauty. She began to display her inner beauty to her husband. And that is by making his khidmah. He used to work throughout the day. When he would come late at night, then she would have, the food ready for him, make fresh roti for him. As is their custom there, then she used to feed him. She used to give him, malish and a massage on his head. She would clean his boots and his clothing, etc., for the next day. And she went out of her way to make khidmah for her husband. And very soon thereafter, as time went on, mashallah, she then had earned the love of her husband. She won him over. And this is exactly what Mufti Abdul Rahman Sahib was speaking about, that in relationships, akhlaq is important. And when one detects that there's an issue, or there is some kind of distance, there is some kind of aversion between two people, two individuals in any relationship. Here specifically, we are speaking about marital relationship, or even between oneself and one's in-laws. Then we should display that akhlaq, inshallah. And akhlaq that we should display is our own akhlaq. Don't let the next person set your standard when it comes to your akhlaq and character. If somebody else is acting, if the opposite party is acting difficult, if the opposite party is being unreasonable, then Islam and Shariat has encouraged us that we should do the opposite. And the broader lesson from those kind of ahadith and many ayat of Quran, the ayat and ahadith that encourage us that, that you should repel difficult or bad with good, and display, good character to that person who is bad to you. The underlying message from this is, don't let that person set your standard. He may have a lower standard, or she may have a lower standard of akhlaq and understanding. You have a different standard. You should be displaying the standard that you have. So Noor Bibi had won over, so to say, the love, mashallah, of her husband. But it so happened that she passed away. And then this person thereafter remarried. And this time when he chose somebody who was very, attractive, and one whom he was obviously, happy with. Tariq Jamil Saab says that I witnessed the second part of this man's life. And he says, despite this person being married to a woman who was outwardly very beautiful, but unfortunately, this particular woman never had much akhlaq internally. She didn't have inner beauty. I don't mean to say that if somebody has outer beauty, they are void of inner beauty. No, there's, mashallah, there's no those people who have both beauties, alhamdulillah. And neither do I say that if somebody does not have outer beauty, they will always have inner beauty and good akhlaq. But this is just what happened in this incident. So he says that I then saw the second part of this person's life, that, you know, he became so grieved that although he was married to somebody who was very outwardly attractive, but he could not forget the first wife that he had. And in the words of Maulana Sahib, he says that this person, you know, his life, at the end, he began to just remember that wife and say, Noor Bibi, karte karte mar gaya. You know, like that, he left this dunya with the grief of his first wife in his heart, the loss of his first wife. So the khulasa here is that our akhlaq needs to come to the fore, you know, and focus on the positives. Here, this person who was married to that woman who wasn't so attractive, initially he was focusing only on the outer appearance of the woman. And gradually she, mashallah, managed to change the situation and show him her inner akhlaq, and then in turn change his focus. And now when he focused on her, you know, on the good, then alhamdulillah, that marriage then bloomed and blossomed. And that is also the lesson that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given us in the hadith, that in sakhita minha shay'an radiya minha akhar, or kama qala sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that if a person is not happy with something in his spouse, then there would definitely be something else that he can focus on which will please him. You know, we should find the positives in each other and focus on that. This brings to mind the incident of Imran ibn Hittan, who is one of the narrators of hadith. And when he married, he wasn't very attractive, and his wife was extremely beautiful. So one day, obviously, it may have been some jovial sitting with his wife. His wife tells him, you know what, both of us can get Jannah. Both of us can get Jannah. That he says, "U'tita fashakart." She says that, you know, you have been granted. Allah gave you somebody very beautiful, and if you are grateful, you will get Jannah. وَبْتُلِيتُ فَصَبَرْتُ. And I have been put through a test, that I've been married to someone who outwardly does not match me. But if I am patient, then I will also get Jannah. So this is an example of us focusing, you know, on each other's positives, and in that way, inshallah, these relationships can last, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq. As I mentioned, these are a few points regarding, you know, marital relations with one's spouse, but the same would apply to one's extended family with regards to in-laws and whoever else, you know, we have to interact with.
Jazakallah khair, Jazakallah khair. MashaAllah. Now I would like to turn to Dr. Human, and if he can give some of his experiences from the psychological perspective with the COVID-19 situation and families locked down at home, spouses working from home, children learning online at home, stuck at home, all the trips outside are limited. What is he seeing from the clinical setting? What type of situations are coming your way that you are dealing with?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's my honor to join you all and to be with Mufti Minhaj, who's actually my teacher, and hopefully it's some indication of your being pleased with me as your student, that you have asked me to join this panel, inshallah. And I'd like to speak to some of the work that I do. I think I can speak from a psychological perspective, because I know as we are facing a global pandemic, and we're talking about the COVID-19, which is a physical sickness, right? We're also on the verge, according to the UN and WHO and other health organizations and experts, that are showing that we're also seeing an emerging mental health pandemic as well. And what makes it a pandemic, a mental health pandemic? Because we're sort of locked in our homes. And I want to speak to more of the marriage, not marriage rather, but family aspects, as well as marriage, is that individuals, when you are at home, a lot of issues come to the surface, right? Things that when you're going to work and you're leaving the house and you're distracted and you have other things going on, they sometimes take away from the underlying issues that you may have been avoiding for so long. So take, for example, we have two times in the life of a marriage in which divorces are at their highest points, according to studies, right? One point is the post-honeymoon stage. So this is when individuals first get married And they're sort of on the same, there's like, you know, that there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that your love for something blinds and deafens. So essentially you're on cloud nine, everything is good, you're overlooking everything. There's a lot of passionate love, they say, right? And what happens is that after that honeymoon stage kind of fades and the spell wears off, what ends up happening is that the differences between two people actually come to the surface. And also literature shows that the most successful marriages, right, are those who are actually most similar to each other. That doesn't mean that people who are dissimilar are not going to be able to get along. It just means that they have their work cut out for themselves, okay? And so even when we look at the concept of kufu, right, in marriage, right, like marry people of your same background and context and social status, and even some ulama, correct me if I'm wrong, even say, you know, it's natural to marry somebody of your own culture, even though marrying somebody from other culture has its other rewards and advantages as well. But why? Because then when you marry somebody who's very similar to you, right, then what happens is that you have very few differences that you have to bridge. You're sort of on the same page. The less differences that you have to bridge, the more successful the marriage will be. So if we look at the post-honeymoon stage, what happens? What happens after the post-honeymoon stage is that the spell wears off and the differences come to the surface. And how different you are from one another. So if you're very different from one another, that dip in marital satisfaction will be greater. If you're less different from one another, the dip will be not as drastic. Okay, but nonetheless, you'll experience a dip, right? Because two people are never the same, even if they come from the same culture, same background. You know, I oftentimes say this. I ask people, who's the best person for you to marry? Who would be the most ideal spouse for you? And the answer is yourself, right? I mean, if you could make a kind of opposite gendered version of yourself, and you would be the best person for it, because you know exactly what you want and how you want it done, right? But obviously we live in a world where we marry individuals who may be different than ourselves. And so we have that work cut out for us. And so when the post-honeymoon stage, what ends up happening is differences emerge, and that's when a divorce might happen, right? When those differences emerge and they can't reconcile those differences, they say that sort of 1 year itch is like a 1 year itch, 1.5 year itch. Then there's like a 5 year itch. And then the other stage, the other one is empty nest syndrome. So what do some people do? They end up actually distracting themselves. What do? They have children, or they get absorbed in their careers or their social lives, and they sort of live parallel lives. They make it work. They make it kind of manageable. And the empty nest syndrome is when the kids leave, is when we see the next round of divorce happening, or when they're on the verge of leaving, when they're in their adulthood. Because why? Now the focus is taken off of caretaking of the children and brought back. And so when we're in this pandemic, what's happening is that we're stuck with each other, right? Ali radiallahu anhu was asked about marriage. Somebody asked him, Mal haqiqatu nikah? What is the reality of marriage? And he said, Sururu shahrin ghumum dahrin. Right? He said that it's a few months of joy and a long period of distress and anxiety. Right? So the idea, now, I don't want to take a very pessimistic approach, but the idea is that we have to keep very realistic expectations to say that marriage entails some work. It takes some hard work to actually make this happen, right? And so all these issues have kind of come to the surface, and what's happening is all your differences are also on the surface, and you start to get sort of on each other's nerves, and what may be benign issues. I mean, the healthy couples, they're getting into issues as well. And how are they getting into issues? Well, there's a difference between the healthy couple and the non-healthy couple. And let me give you the example. The healthy couple will just get on each other's nerves, and there's no deeper issue. It's just, they just, are too close in space. They're in one another's space. They're spending too much time. They say some distance grows fondness, right? They're around each other too much. They start to get on each other's nerves. Now, deeper rooted issues is those people who are in the same quarters. Now, those benign issues of just sort of, managing the kitchen or the house or the schedule or sleeping routines or whatever, are actually indicators of something deeper. And what you end up having is, and when you see this, you see like, very benign issues become very, very emotional very quickly. And sometimes they go into discussing more deeper issues as well. And so you can't get away from that. And so people are kind of, stuck in the space where they have to meet one another and live with one another. I want to turn this more, conversation. I know it's a sort of a panel. So I did address your question about, what is sort of the psychology of the mental health pandemic. And certainly at Khalil Center, we're seeing a lot more marital discord. In fact, we're seeing more people now than we did when we were open. Our offices were open. We're doing it online now, right? And the influx is beyond what we can actually manage. So certainly we see that there is a mental health pandemic kind of emerging, and certainly marriages and family discord on the rise. So I answered that question. I just want to open the floor and say, Mufti Saab, is there anything in particular that you want me to speak to, or Maulana, Muhammad, if he wanted to kind of speak to it? I want to sort of open it up and speak to what you're interested in.
Jazakallahu Khair. Yes. Alhamdulillah, we've been speaking about managing the spouses and the in-law relationships for some time with Mufti Abdul Rahman Manghera. That's the topic we started with, mashallah, as he's the author of the whole book on that topic. But moving forward, we also have in our advertised subtopics, we also included the rights of parents, the rights of children, and siblings. So we wanted to move on to these relationships as well. So Muhammad, if you can enlighten us with respect to the rights of parents, briefly from an Islamic perspective. Mashallah, Maulana Muhammad is doing great khidmah of his own father and is practicing on these guidelines himself. We know very well. But if you can share with us, inshallah, some reminders.
The rights of parents, children, is a very long and a broad topic. But obviously, we are focused more on the challenges that we face in these relationships under the current circumstances and the worldwide pandemic. And just to summarize, the rights of parents, generally, when I try to explain this to people, I find maybe the best way for us to understand it is that there is nobody more important. There's nobody more important in our lives after Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam than our parents. This is actually to encapsulate and summarize all the injunctions. If we inspect the ayat of Quran, the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that after mentioning the rights of Allah and His Messenger, the next in line are our parents. And Wallahu alam, if there's a hadith that has got such great promise, I can only think of two hadiths. One has got to do with our topic that we normally quote as al-jannatu tahta aqdam al-ummahat. The words actually in Sunan Nasa'i are ilzamha fa inna al-jannata tahta rijlayha. But stick to your mother. In other words, serve her, for indeed Jannat lies beneath her feet. This is a well-known, mashallah, hadith globally. The next thing that is mentioned, or another such hadith, another such virtue, is for one to give his life. Al-jannatu tahta zilal as-suyuf. Person to give his life under the sword, in other words, defending Islam, that is where Jannat lies. And that is a test that is obviously much more difficult for people than the first one. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an easy route to Jannah. And yes, for some it might be more challenging than others. Some have parents that have greater needs than others. But these are the two greatest saints, so to say. We should view them as the greatest saints that we have, because Every person looks to be close to some kind of a sheikh and some spiritual scholar and guide. And the ultimate goal behind that is so that their path to Jannah, is made easy. And the path of suluk, like we call it in Tasawwuf. But the suluk via your parents is also one channel in which, and a channel that Allah has given every person. And the opportunity Allah has given all of us, that we all have parents. Even if our parents have left this dunya, we can still show our obedience to them by doing isal al-thawab, by maintaining their relationships that they had with others, etc. That's a separate topic. But in the pandemic itself, it's important for us, there are two types of situations. One would be where the parents are with us in the homes. I would say these are those who are very fortunate, mashallah, they have the opportunity and time now to give their parents, and make the khidmah because we are in the home. And the second situation is where the parents live elsewhere. And then obviously it becomes even more difficult in such a situation for us to be with them physically. But what is very, very important is for us to keep in contact with them all the time, whether it is during this pandemic or on other occasions. If they are not living with us, then we should have constant contact with them. As they grow older, they yearn more for this time that they can get with their children, with their children, with their grandchildren. Yes, they have a certain limit that they can take. And on the lighter side, the person says, my two most joyous moments one is when my grandchildren arrive and they come home, and the second is when they leave. So obviously there's a limit as well, but focusing on the first one, and that is that the amount of joy they get by seeing their offspring coming to them, spending time with them. And during this pandemic, we may not be able to go to them physically, but we should at least keep in contact on the phone. And if they do have special needs, then go out of our way to ensure that those needs are catered for. I mean, they have nobody else. We are the ones, obviously, who are first in line. We are the ones who will firstly inherit. Also, I'm giving the logical aspect. We are the ones who will inherit as well first from them. We are the ones who benefited from them the most in our lives, growing up during our infancy and early years. Now it's time for us to give back. And this is logical also. It's an accepted principle globally, and it's a fundamental principle of Islam for us to maintain the relationship with our parents. Again, I will quote my beloved father, Hafizahullah. He says that, when I went to study in the early 70s, then my grandmother obviously was very grieved that he was gone, was far, what's going to happen to him, how will he live there in Pakistan, a person who grew up in South Africa, how will he manage? So he says that to try and break that, I began to write letters home. Those days, obviously, there were no cell phones. The telephone also was an expensive call overseas. He says, I used to write letters every week, and I wrote hundreds of letters like this. And in that way, all the time, mashallah, she used to get news, and we were in contact like that. So if she's receiving a letter every week from her son, and he's giving her different, news of where he went and who he visited and what he learned from his ustads, etc. He says that, alhamdulillah, made it much easier for my respected grandmother to bear the grief of separation. So the same here, we now, alhamdulillah, the times have changed. We have technology. We can phone them all the time. Minimum once a day if our parents are elderly, keep in contact with them. Like I'm saying, if they have special needs, then you may have to phone them more than once. And if you can go, then you ought to make the time and go and serve them. Sometimes their needs might seem unreasonable. Mufti Abdul Rahman Sahab touched on this in a different aspect altogether. Sometimes their needs might seem unreasonable to us, but in Shariat, they have been given, so to say, a blank check. That whatever are their needs, it is our responsibility and duty to fulfill it to the best of our reasonable ability. And keeping in mind that one day we will also grow old. We also will have needs. And the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned that if a person in his youth served an elderly person, any elderly person, let alone it be his father or his mother, but he served that person because of their old age and because of their dependency, then when he grows old, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cater for his needs also to be served. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cater by providing somebody who will look after their needs and be there at the time of dependence. As far as the children are concerned, a big challenge today is that people are short of time. And this condition Allah has brought globally has given everybody something that was most valuable, but now when we have it, we've got no value for it. We had no time. We were all busy in our work. We were all busy in our daily activities. Now we are at home and we don't know what to do with this. Whereas time is life, and this is our greatest asset. And our assets of dunya, we're talking about general physical assets, not the spiritual assets. The greatest asset a person has, or you can say from his own assets and his own earnings, are his children. And when you, in the worldly sense, people are valued when it comes to their, financial portfolios. But socially, when you meet a friend after long, you meet him after many years, you greet each other, mashallah, and then you ask, are you married? How many children do you have? You don't ask him, are you married? And what's your bank balance? You don't ask him, how many properties do you own? Or how many cars, or what car are you driving? Or what's the value of the watch on your wrist? No, socially, we value each other based on our family and the children we have. So the children we have are our greatest assets. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put us back with them under that roof with sufficient amount of time. The global complaint of children is, my father doesn't have time for me. And we as parents also sometimes feel that guilt that we are not giving enough time to our children. This is the time now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us where we can make up for that lost time. Now you should take out time, and you have enough time to even think and plan, what are those core values that I want to instill in my child? What are those personal experiences that I had in life that I want to share with my child, so that inshallah it can benefit them? Because once we go back to the old normal, if we return to our old normal, then this time again will be taken away. Again, we might not have that amount of time to spare for our children. Therefore, it is essential that during this time, we should definitely make a concerted effort and actually plan as to what are the different values, what are the different experiences that I want to share with my child. There's a very beautiful couplet, the last part of which I will share now, and the beginning of it I will share at the end, inshallah. The last part of this, and the couplet has been attributed to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, but wallahu a'lam, ulama mentioned that there are two people among the Salaf, among the earlier scholars, to whom many things are wrongfully attributed. So wallahu a'lam if this is really Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu's statement, but it's a statement of great meaning when this person mentions that ليس اليتيم الذي مات والده. That person who has got no father is not the yatim. We take pity, and rightfully so, on those children who have lost their parents. But he's speaking in a different sense. He says that that person who's got no father is not necessarily a yatim. إن اليتيم يتيم العلم والأدب. So ليس اليتيم الذي مات والده. That person who has lost his father is not really a yatim, but rather a yatim and an orphan is the one who has been orphaned of knowledge and values, Islamic values and adab and etiquette. The child that has not been brought up properly, the child whose father may still be alive, but the father and mother never had the time to instill in them proper values. That child, despite having his physical parents and biological parents with him, is considered a yatim because the purpose for which he had those parents was not fulfilled. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to value these moments. On one hand, it may be difficult, but on the other hand, this is a ni'mah that Allah has given us, and we should value it. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhuma mentions that addib ibnak, teach your child proper values and etiquette and adab, فَإِنَّكَ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْهُ. You will be questioned in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about this. مَاذَا أَدَّبْتَهُ وَمَاذَا عَلَّمْتَهُ. How much of Islamic knowledge have you given him, and how much of values have you passed on to him? This is a question you have to answer on the day of Qiyamah. Allah give us tawfiq.
Jazakallahu khair, Jazakallahu khair. You covered it very well from both the rights of the parents in a beautiful manner. You summarized it, mashallah, as well as the rights of the children. I would like to turn to Brother Human now, and from the psychological perspective and counseling in the field, what are some of the issues, top issues you have seen with respect to parents and children, particularly adolescents, the issues they have with their parents, and also older parents that they have issues by being abandoned by their children?
Yeah. Jazakallahu Khair. I think, issues aside, I think an issue that I can outline that perhaps summarizes many of the major issues is something that's familiar to all of us, and that is that we are living as American Muslims. May perhaps in South Africa it's a little bit different. In North America, Muslims, there's a huge our generation, right? This is sort of second and even into the third generation. We live in a very different time than the generation of the one that was above us. So if we look at it, I mean, I'm sure many of the listeners can relate to this, that their own parents, particularly those who have migrated to these lands, they have huge support networks, right? They have multiple siblings. If, there's a discord between one sibling and another, there's, a couple of other siblings that they might feel closer to or can find that sense of support. And I think, the notion that, it takes a village to raise a child, it takes kind of a community to engender, good sort of cohesion and relationships and senses of support. I mean, studies show that one of the most valuable things that religion provides, just talking psychologically, obviously we know, the function of Islam is to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's our ultimate aim and objective, and to get the ma'rifah of Allah ta'ala. But one of the things that it shows is that it provides community a sense of support and connection. And in these times, I think our parents are aging, right? And they're becoming elderly parents, and we're seeing this a lot. And then the children have very few kind of support networks to be able to really assist them. We're sort of stuck, right? Certainly we don't want to put our parents in nursing homes. We want to tend to their needs, but there's only like 2 of us. There's only 3 of us, 4 of us, compared to a generation above us where there may have been 5, 10. And then when you include all these cousins, siblings and their cousins, et cetera, you have a lot of people around you with assistance, right? And so I think that some of the challenges that we're finding is that, this generation has to balance and juggle a sort of an environment in which we have to take care of our children, and then we have to take care of our parents, right? And then we have to actually have enough income to survive, because, it's becoming increasingly challenging. I mean, not just then during the COVID, even before the COVID. Once upon a time, it was very easy to get by on a single family income. For many families, that's not the case. It's becoming increasingly challenging. Those that want to have the single family income certainly do so with challenges, right? They have to make do with what they have. And so I think the support becomes very challenging. And there is something really incredible, I mean, in the Islamic tradition with the concept of rada, right? There's actually a book written on this by Karen Popenoe. She writes about this. She's an anthropologist, and she kind of visited Muslim cultures and societies, traditional ones, and she was really amazed with the sort of communal structures that they were able to develop. And she was really taken aback by this notion of artificial kinship, what she terms artificial kinship, or non-biological kinship, right? And non-biological kinship was this sort of, milk mothers, and they would become mahram to each other, and then they would become siblings. And it sort of created a sort of a scenario where there was this really extended family, right? And so when we're talking about all of this, I mean, we're talking about the need for support. And I think we do not have the same luxury of breaking our relationships that the older generation had. I'm not saying that anybody should break relationships, right? But when you have 1 or 2 siblings, now think about this. the children's lives depends on the fabric and health of this nuclear family. So what happens if there's discord between mom and dad? Who's going to absorb that discord? In traditional societies, you may turn to an uncle. You may turn to a grandparent, right? That can absorb that for you. But we're living in a time where that's becoming increasingly challenging. So our children do have some of these challenges, but we do too, right? And so this is where we really need to think about ensuring that we really strengthen the bonds that we have, whether that's between spouses, right? I mean, certainly, between two partners, husband and wife, they need to be on the same page. They need to work together, right? And there's an acceptance of the fact that we are different and our needs are different, but we need to work together to figure out how do we, meet one another's mutual needs, not only in this relationship, but also our responsibilities. How are we going to co-parent these children? How are we going to ensure that they're not sucked up and absorbed by this sort of mainstream society that preaches values that are counter to our values? How are we going to take care of your parents? How are we going to take care of my parents? How are we going to ensure that we manage sibling relationships? And so it's really important that this relationship is cohesive. And by the way, I want to mention something I think is a very important note, that studies show that the most successful marriages are not the marriages that have an absence of problems. And we can extend this. Relationships, close relationships, are not those relationships that have an absence of problems. To the contrary, if you don't have any problems, right? If you're always getting along, then you're probably having some superficiality in your relationship, because when you fight, it's because you care, right? People have a pulse. I mean, I see couples, sometimes older generation folks, right, in their 50s, and they've just lived with each other, managed each other for so long, and they just don't care, right? That the way that they cope is they just don't care anymore. You see what I'm saying? And that's the way they get by. So when we care, we hurt, we feel pain, we feel emotions, and then we express those emotions. But what we want to do is to recognize that we want to be able to depersonalize. Number one thing is depersonalize. Don't make it about you, right? Like if a person is getting upset, think about it as maybe they want some love, maybe they need support, maybe they need attention, maybe they are having a tough day, maybe the economy is struggling, they're sort of anxious. There's a whole host of things, but we often personalize it. We make it about ourselves, right? But it's often not that way, right? And so we want to depersonalize, and what we want to do is to manage our problems. The most effective couples are those who manage problems. They don't necessarily have to resolve. And it takes wisdom for the couple to come together and to recognize what are solvable and unsolvable problems. So solvable problems we should solve. We should sit down, have a conversation, get some help and support if we need to from the ulama, from places like Khalil Center, from therapists, counselors, psychologists, etc. Get the support, use the asbab you need in order to solve your problems, but then recognize the problems that you can't solve. And those problems require management, okay? How are we going to manage it? I'll give you a brief example. I'll end on this, inshallah. And I'll give you the example of in-laws. So support. We know that we have to have these relationships. We say, look, mother and daughter-in-law relationships are by nature, historically, has always been this sort of, you look across cultures, it's always been a problem. So, and it's natural. It's a very natural problem. And I don't have the time to get into the psychology of it. There's a lot to say about why that is. But let me just give you an example of a healthy couple, for example, that I've observed, right, in my work that I do with some of my clients, is those that can effectively manage it. For example, the husband says, look, I'm not going to, talk about my mom extensively or about her food or compare or say things in front of her. It might trigger her. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about it in front of my wife. And I'm not going to pressure her. Oh, you have to go do this for my mom. You have to do this khidmah. You have to do that. You have to do that. You just kind of leave it. Take that responsibility on your own. You as the son, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Right. And so he takes it upon himself. And then he says, and then he doesn't force her to come. But then the wife says, look, this is at the end of the day, my husband's mother. This relationship isn't going to be cut off. It's a permanent relationship. Let me, assist. But I know my own limit. I can't go and visit her like every single day. I can't go every week. Maybe I can go every other week. Once a week he goes on his own. Every other week I go. Once a month we all go as a family. Every now, sometimes I send food. So your capacity, your own capacity. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Khudhu min al-a'mali ma tutiqun." Take that action in which you have the capacity for. So do your capacity. And what happens is this example, in this couple, they made it work. How? They didn't resolve the issues, right? The husband still didn't like the fact that the wife had these certain notions about his mom that he didn't like, but they didn't talk about it. They didn't have to resolve it. The wife had these sort of issues about her mother-in-law, and she wanted her husband to understand that. And he has an inherent bias, and he has a difficult time listening to critique about his mom. So she said, look, I'm going to leave that alone. We're not going to get into it. Okay. And so we manage this problem. And so this is what we need to do, is to recognize that we resolve solvable problems. We don't solve solvable problems. We manage them, but we definitely want to keep those relationships strong in order to be able to absorb, look at the current that we're facing. We have huge responsibilities ahead of us and so much depending on us that I think we don't have the ability, and we can't afford to break these relationships up. And so I think this is trying times for us during COVID, but certainly let's turn these trying times into opportunities for growth and connection. And that's what I'll end on, inshallah. Jazakumullahu Khairan.
Jazakallahu Khair. As we come to the conclusion of the program, I just wanted to let our listeners know, alhamdulillah, about the websites that we can benefit from of our respected panelists. Mullah Muhammad ibn Harun Abbas Umar, mashallah, has the hadithanswers.com website. He has a Darul Hadith, mashallah. You might have heard of Darul Iftas, where fatwa are issued and fiqh topics are discussed, and people have fiqh questions, and the muftis, they give the answers to those questions. But mashallah, Mullah Muhammad has a very unique Darul Hadith, where we can ask questions pertaining to a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he has a team of researchers where they research the nature of the hadith, if it is authentic or not. Nowadays, there are so many different statements attributed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that are being passed around on WhatsApp. The WhatsApp narrations, narrated by WhatsApp. So, we also get those questions a lot of time from people. Is this truly a hadith or not? Is this actually what the Prophet ﷺ said? What's the reference for this? And even personally, myself, one of my top resources that I go to find answers is mashallah, Mullah Muhammad's website. I go there routinely. I visit it, and pretty much any question that I receive, I always find the answer there, and I just forward the link. I don't even have to copy it. I just send the link over to the questioner. And then on the other hand, we have Khalil Center, mashallah. We can physically go visit them once the COVID-19 is gone, inshallah, once the lockdown is over. And otherwise, online, Khalil Center's website. We're going to be putting up the websites on our YouTube chat, so we can visit them. They are a very unique center. And I also, whenever we get calls from people looking for counseling, premarital counseling, postmarital counseling, divorce counseling, traumatic counseling, different issues youth are facing, adults are facing, we always send them over to Khalil Center, and we have gotten amazing feedback from the great work that they're doing over there. And before I ask our panelists to give their concluding remarks, I just wanted to announce, alhamdulillah, as I did not mention it verbally, but you have been seeing on the screen that we have a drive right now going on for the Dar es Salaam students to purchase desks. We are selling these desks for $125. These are going to be desks where the students of knowledge will be studying Quran and Hadith and Fiqh and Aqidah and Tafsir, all the ulum of Sharia, men and women, alimas and ulama and alimat, and you will continue to get the sadaqah jariyah of the reward that will be generated from these students of knowledge as long as these desks are going to be used, inshallah. So one brother, he just purchased 20 desks. MashaAllah, takbir, Allahu Akbar, 20 desks he purchased. He wanted to avoid the fees online, so he came in person and he just purchased it. May Allah Ta'ala reward the brother. May Allah Ta'ala grant him the sadaqah jariyah of all the ulama and alimat that will be studying. And may Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala make his children also ulama and alimat, and allow this reward to continue in his generations and ilm to continue in his generations. So now, inshallah, I will ask Mullah Muhammad if he can, in this era of COVID-19, it looks like this pandemic is not going to be over anytime soon. It's going to take a long time for us to return to normal. What are your concluding advices, how we should lead our lives? You can give any general advice, limited, not limited just to the family situation we've been talking about. Any advice that you give as we are in this lockdown situation?
In this situation we find ourselves in, like Mufti Sahib has mentioned, we don't know how long more it's going to last, and this uncertainty is, it takes a toll also on the psychological self. And Dr. Human will also obviously know more on that. Very, very important as a general advice is that all of us should take our time. We find ourselves now in the month of Quran, but even after the month of Quran, after Ramadan, to recite Quran daily, as much as possible. Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed as a shifa, as a cure for all illnesses and as a solution for all problems. The mere recital of Quran, really heals the spiritual self, the psychological, challenges a person has. Quran has the effect of removing all of those problems. And there are narrations where certain tabi'un, some have attributed it to Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, that a person who remains dedicated to Quran, his mind, his psychological self, his mental state, inshallah, will remain healthy, inshallah al-aziz. So Quran is absolutely essential. Obviously, whether it be COVID-19 or not, pre or post COVID-19, Quran has to be in the life of every Muslim every day. But more so now, as we know that on the other side of this pandemic, we have another pandemic awaiting, and that is a mental health issue. There's no doubt in that. But Quran, inshallah, is a fundamental cure for that illness, inshallah. And coming back to the topic that we were discussing, since we find ourselves all under one roof, and we had the issue of siblings, Quran mentions to us two types of siblings. One is the type of Habil and Qabil, or Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers, and the other is the set of Nabi Musa and Nabi Harun alayhi salam. And on one hand, Habil did to his brother, Qabil did to his brother Habil what no brother should ever even fathom of doing, the worst of deeds, and that is to take the life of his own brother, based on malice, based on jealousy, etc. And on that point of malice and jealousy, we find ourselves, tonight might be the odd night in many countries, might be Laylatul Qadr. On occasions like these, any person who harbors any malice in his heart for any Muslim brother, let alone his blood brother, then on nights like these, he is also deprived. So we should make a concerted effort of settling our scores, so to say, forgive and forget, inshallah, for the greater good and for our own personal good as well. This has spiritual benefit for ourselves first, as well as mental benefit and psychological benefit for the person who lets go. He lets go of the old feud and who looks at the broader good. And on the other hand was Nabi Musa alayhi salam and Nabi Harun alayhi salam. No brother asked for anything greater than what Nabi Musa alayhi salam asked for his brother, and that was for prophethood and nubuwwat. And Musa alayhi salam asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make Harun alayhi salam a Nabi. So that is the example that we should follow. If we were in the first group of those who had, at odds and loggerheads all the time with our fellow siblings, whether those who are living with us under the same roof, or if we are all now married and settled and living, far away, then we still have time to make amends like we find in the incident of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers, although they were cruel to him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after they went through difficulty, Allah gave them the chance to make amends for that mistake. So we can take inspiration from Ahsan al-Qasas, the greatest, the best of stories, the story of Yusuf alayhi salam in Quran. And as parents, we need to take control also of the situation between our children. If there is any friction, then we should step in, with balanced heads and with insaf and justice, and be fair, and logically explain to them the need for harmony among each other. We can also take inspiration in situations like this COVID-19 from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family, the Banu Hashim, when they were also, so to say, quarantined, and they were also put in lockdown for several years, 2.5 to 3 years, some historians have mentioned, up to 3 years of quarantine. We are now 3 months in quarantine, some people, some 2 months in quarantine and lockdown, and it's so difficult. And there's no comparison between the type of lockdown we are experiencing and that which had to be experienced by the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. But in the Sha'bi Abi Talib, in the mountain pass of Abu Talib, the Banu Hashim actually bonded more and they came out stronger, and that relationships then, mashallah, continued and flourished thereafter. So we should come out of this pandemic, whenever it would leave us, and Allah make it soon, stronger than before, inshallah. Relationships should actually be bonded and mended in this situation and not broken like we are finding happening throughout the globe. If there is sunnah in the house, if there is Quran in the house, then inshallah this situation, spending time and additional time with each other, would actually bond us and actually bring more khair. There should be time when the siblings sit together, or when the parents and the family sits together and they recite Quran, they make dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We find there's so many, mashallah, like Mufti Minhaj has mentioned, WhatsApp narrations, but there are many WhatsApp messages that are coming from our senior ulama, and we are fortunate to have so many of them, alhamdulillah, still alive to guide us during this trying time. The different type of recitals to be recited, different awrad and adhkar to be recited during this pandemic. This inshallah will help us in drawing the mercy of Allah globally and on a general scale, and will also help and assist us personally in our lives and in our homes. This will bond us, inshallah, when we're sitting together, and instead of sitting together and watching television, na'udhu or sitting together and doing some other fruitless exercise, rather sitting together and making ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring love and muhabbat, and you will see the opposite happening. It's the way of of others and non-Muslims, where this spending time together based on their culture and their lifestyle, this now has led to breakup of relationships. But if you are leading the life of Sunnah and following the guidelines of Quran and Hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then inshallah this time and spending more time with each other will actually make us stronger on the other side. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. On one occasion, my respected Ustad Sheikh Muhammad Awama Hafizahullah, when he visited our country in 2012, then upon his departure, when he was leaving, I mentioned to Sheikh, we are sad that now you are leaving us. And in this current situation also, many of us are saddened by the situation that we cannot meet our near and dear ones, we cannot visit them, life is not normal. So Sheikh had mentioned this small couplet, وَهَوَّنَ وَجْدِي أَنَّ الْفِرَاقَ بَيْنَنَا فِرَاقُ حَيَاةٍ لَا فِرَاقُ مَمَاتٍ. This is something that will keep us going, inshallah, something to look forward to, that I'm grieved, but my grief is lessened by the fact that the separation that we are experiencing now is a separation of life and not a separation of death. That alhamdulillah, although on one hand we cannot meet our near and dear ones, but we are still alive. We have been separated from each other, but life still exists. And inshallah, there's hope of meeting one day again. It's not the separation of mamat and death. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for those who have lost near and dear ones in the current pandemic. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve those who are still alive, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep all our near and dear ones safe and grant us all afiyah. I had mentioned that I would like to end with the entire couplet that I referred to, that is attributed to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. Allahu a'lam if it was his statement, but the couplet starts as لَيْسَ الْبَلِيَّةُ فِي أَيَّامِنَا عَجَبًا. And it's so, it's so apt for our situation now. although this may have been mentioned so many years or centuries ago, that ليس البلية في أيامنا عجبا, trials, calamities, difficulty is not something strange these days. There's always something that is cropping up, whether it be, in one's personal life, whether it be on a national scale in different countries or internationally, the ummah at large. بل السلامة فيها أعجب. Rather, to be safe is something that is, rare and strange. But to suffer and to be in some kind of a challenging situation is actually has become the norm. Then he says, ليس الجمال بأثواب تزيننا. Beauty is not just the beauty you achieve through the beautiful clothes that you adorn yourself with. It's not just the outer beauty like we were speaking about in the first segment of the program. إن الجمال جمال العلم والأدب. Real beauty is the beauty of knowledge and again values. Real beauty is the beauty of the knowledge, and knowledge here would be referring to knowledge of deen and Islamic values and Islamic ethics. ليس اليتيم الذي قد مات والده. The yatim is not that person whose father has left this dunya, but a poor yatim. إن اليتيم يتيم العلم والأدب. That is considered a yatim who, despite his parents being alive, has been deprived of Islamic upbringing, Islamic knowledge and Islamic values and ethics. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq of inshallah coming out of this pandemic soon and very quickly, and coming out stronger as a ummah, as a family unit, and as Muslims. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Jazakallahu khair, Maulana. Those are beautiful words. And actually, the last topic on the schedule was to speak about siblings, and I had missed that, and you brought that up. I really loved how you gave the example of Habil and Qabil on one side, and on the other side, Musa and Harun alayhi salam. That was a very beautiful comparison of brothers in the Quran, mashallah. And Jazakallah khair. And you spoke about the importance of reading Quran, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nasu qad ja'atkum maw'izatun min rabbikum wa shifa'un lima fi sudur. So shifa'un lima fi sudur, it is the cure. Definitely the Quran is a cure for the sickness of the heart. Alhamdulillah, you will be pleased, and I'm just mentioning this so we can gain your du'as as well. Here at Dar es Salaam, we had a campaign for 1,000 khatams, and alhamdulillah, we have Ijtimai Dua on the 29th for all the khatams together, and alhamdulillah, we have pledges of around 1,400 khatams. We started off with 1,000, but it's over 1,400 khatams people have pledged to make, inshallah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. I read about this, alhamdulillah, in your email. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. It's a great initiative. Maybe we could reach 1,441, inshallah, equaling the Hijri year.
Oh, that's a beautiful idea, mashallah. Okay. Brother Oman, Jazakallah khair for being patient with us and joining us. I know you're busy with so many patients you have in this time of crisis. If you can give us your concluding remarks, and if there's anything you want to touch on the siblings, which was the last topic, that you're free to do so as well. And considering that we may be in for the long haul, this may not be over anytime soon. Locally, our governor of Illinois is not going to open up. He has put up the phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, for reopening everything. And the final phase is only when a vaccine has been developed, right? As everyone is aware by now. So that may take 12 to 18 months for having a vaccine available. And we are not been only cut off from work and school, but the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where we would get recharged spiritually. We have missed the Taraweeh. We are potentially missing the Jummah. We have been missing even the Eid Salah. So people are feeling very lonely, and they're cut off from society. So what are your final advices in this time? How can we maintain our mental health?
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. I'll make it brief, inshallah. I think, my brief suggestion would be to embrace it. I mean, the thing is that there's a lot of fears and anxieties, I think, that are being brought to the surface, in particular death anxiety, right? I think a lot of people are sort of afraid of getting sick and dying. And then the other aspect is afraid of being alone. So I think a lot of individuals being alone are sort of confronted with their own thoughts, having to face themselves and not distract themselves from either their own realities, inner realities, or the reality of the life hereafter, the real reality, the akhirah. And I think we do have a propensity and to try to get ourselves to distract from that reality. And even though the world has been sort of closed down, the internet has opened up, and we have a like a risk or vulnerability for us to get really absorbed and engaged in that. I would really advise us to embrace this sort of isolation. If we say that if you die by this for the mu'min, it's shahadat, and quarantine for the mu'min is khalwat, right? This isolation is opportunity to spend time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hasibu anfusakum qabla an tuhasabu. Make muhasaba of ourselves, take ourselves to account, make muraqabah, and investigate and look into ourselves. I think these are opportunities for us to really sort of reconnect with that which is real and that which is valuable. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has basically, pulled the dunya away from us. I think we can all conclude and realize that the dunya is very temporal. It can be taken away very easily. And that it's not that glamorous now, is it? Going out, you can't do half the things that you wanted to do before. So I think it's really a time for reflection. It is the last 10 days of Ramadan. I would really advise us to turn off our phones. Certainly excessive searching of the coronavirus and being on the internet has all sorts of psychological negative effects, whether it's affects your sleep cycles, whether it even contributes to kind of headaches. It produces other types of psychological issues, increases anxiety, increases depression, ADHD. There's a lot of adverse effects of being glued to a screen. Yes, for work, we have to be. For these types of beneficial things, we have to be. But we really need to turn off our phones or technology and really embrace and allow yourself, like silence is golden, right? Allow yourself to be in a space silent, develop boredom. People don't know how to be bored. Everybody, like, we are in a hyper stimulatory environment, right? Like, what we want is, we want something, we want it now and on our phones, and we want an image. We haven't developed the capacity to have imagination, to think, to concentrate. Like reading a book, for example, is really challenging, especially for kids. The ADHD sort of epidemic, even before this COVID, there's a lot to do with this sort of inability to keep attention on one thing, because we've taught them to just have, they can, a book does not like pales in comparison to a video game and the sort of stimulation that produces. A book cannot do that for an individual. You have to create that image in your own mind. And for us to be able to sit with that discomfort and that anxiety, I think is important. I was telling one of my clients actually earlier today, who I was having a session with, and he said he uses, the internet just to kind of distract and get himself away from a lot of negative thoughts, a lot of having to face death, even fear of anxiety and death. And he, ironically enough, he's reading less Quran than he would last year, right? I'm not saying that's the norm, but what I'm saying is that if we don't, we can use this opportunity, or we can just sort of go into this vegetative, distractive state. And I think really we should allow ourselves to embrace that discomfort, that boredom, and to connect with family members, children, and ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a month of Quran. This is the last 10 days. Really, we should try to avail ourselves of these amazing opportunities and look at it as an opportunity in the last few days, inshallah. Jazakumullahu Khairun.
Inshallah, Jazakullahu Khairun. Those are really words of wisdom. I'm so grateful to all three of the panelists. One, Mufti Abdul Rahman, has left us. I hope he enjoyed his dinner by now. And then Maulana Muhammad and brother Dr. Human. I would request Mawlana Muhammad Saab if he can conclude with a final dua, inshallah, for us and for the entire ummah. Okay, Mawlana Muhammad, if he may have left. Okay, inshallah. Then I would prefer, as he's my elder, to make the dua, but if he's not available, one moment. Yeah, okay, inshallah. I'll just make the dua then, inshallah. But this is one of the etiquettes we learned, that when we have our elders and our scholars, then we should request them to make dua. I think he's back. Maybe we will get his dua. Mawlana Muhammad, are you with us?
Ji.
Ji, inshallah. We will request if you can make the final concluding dua for the program, inshallah.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد صلاة ترضيك وترضيه وترضى بها عنا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد مفتاح خزائن رحمتك. اللهم افتح لنا بسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ما أغلق علينا من خير الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. اللهم صل صلاة كاملة وسلم سلاما تاما على سيدنا محمد تنحل به العقد وتنفرج به الكرب وتقضى به الحوائج وتنال به الرغائب وحسن الخواتم ويستسقى الغمام بوجهه الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه في كل لمحة ونفس بعدد كل معلوم لك. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد صلاة تنجينا بها من جميع الأهوال والآفات وتقضي لنا بها جميع الحاجات وترفعنا بها عندك أعلى الدرجات وتبلغنا بها أقصى الغايات من جميع الخيرات في الحياة وبعد الممات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به. واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا. أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا لا تجعلنا فتنة للقوم الظالمين ونجنا برحمتك من القوم الكافرين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم اغفر لأمة سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم ارحم أمة سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم الطف بأمة سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم فرج عن أمة سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. ربنا ارحمهما كما ربيانا صغارا. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا اجعلنا مقيمين للصلاة ومن ذريتنا ربنا وتقبل دعاء. ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullahu Khairan for your beautiful dua, for the time you gave us, for the beautiful advices. Inshallah, our respected listeners, may Allah reward you for tuning in and staying with us the entire length of the program. And alhamdulillah, we hope to see you back, inshallah, on Tuesday, May 19th. We'll be having a program 9:15 Central Time regarding Laylatul Qadr and the auspiciousness of this night and some of the virtues of this night. Please join us, inshallah, 9:15 on Tuesday. Of course, we have our daily programs. The slides have been playing throughout the program. I did not repeat them. We have Mawlana Yusuf Ghoth. He's giving a dars of hadith from Kitab al-Zuhd at 1:45 p.m. from Ibn Majah, Sunan Ibn Majah. And then we have Mullah Farhan, he recites juz of the Quran. Since we are missing his Taraweeh, we can listen to it at 6:15 p.m. And then we have Mufti Azimuddin, he does the reviving the heart from Risalat al-Mustarshideen of Imam Muhasibi rahmatullahi alayh. That is immediately after the juz is finished, and with a dua that takes us up to iftar. And then at 9:15 p.m. I come online and we cover different ayahs of the Quran, pearls from the Quran, brief tafsir of a couple ayats every night. And then in the night at 2 a.m. we have the salawat on Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the munajat maqbul du'as by our students, Hafiz Muhsin and Qari Muhammad Patel. So they take turns every other night. And mashallah, these are the programs that are being offered by Dar Islam Online, so we can feel we are part of the masjid, even though physically we're not able to join. Jazakumullahu Khairun. And we hope to have more programs, inshallah. We'll be coming out with our Eid program shortly. The Eid celebration, we are hoping to have a drive-through Eid celebration where people can stay within their cars, come and pick up some gifts for the kids and for the family, and different food items while maintaining the social distancing and the government regulations. So we'll be coming out with the Eid celebration details shortly. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.